Conspiracy theories are most often a smokescreen to divert us from the true evil.
My dad was right. This family's money is dirty.
Imagination is far more fascinating than reality.
Welcome to Working for Uncle Henry, the podcast. I'm the series author and your host, Angela Mullins. Well, in this episode, Parker finds out what his real problem is from Henry and Ijue. Chapter 19. The buyer for Henry's Vermeer painting wanted it delivered to the National Gallery of Art in D.C. as a donation to the museum's collection. Henry made preparations for Parker to deliver it, his first trip since Milan. Uncle Henry, I understand this painting is extremely valuable. Henry puffed his pipe successively while lighting it. When satisfied with his effort, he blew a swirling line of smoke into the air and stared at Parker.
There are only 34 Vermeer works confirmed to be in existence. Christie's just auctioned this one for $5 million, so not his best, but extremely valuable might be an understatement.
Parker swallowed hard. Yes, sir. What I wondered was, is this delivery going to be like the last one? Am I or anyone else in danger?
There's always danger when carrying expensive works of art.
But I mean, is anybody going to get killed again?
Again?
Henry replied as if having forgotten about Milan. Then he waved off the idea.
Oh, that. Parker, no one was murdered in Milan.
What? Of course he was. I saw him.
You saw what we wanted everyone to see. A package exchange that appeared to be a theft or murder.
Parker muttered random sentence fragments, trying to decide what he wanted to say or ask next. But I saw the knife. I saw blood. I checked his pulse.
Henry shrugged. My people are very good.
So good they can fake not having a pulse? Did the Italian police know it was all a farce? A grin peeked through Henry's mustache.
Not at first, but when a dead body sits up and talks to you, you tend to listen.
Parker felt like he was in some elaborate video game with no idea the objective or what he needed to do to win. Hugo accompanied Parker to D.C. for added security to deliver the Vermeer. A private firm assisted upon their arrival. Henry had taken care of transferring provenance information already, but there was still chain of custody and so forth signatures left for Parker. He arrived back at the estate satisfied he had completed the job this time. No deaths, no arrests. He walked around to Henry's study to deliver the news, but an odd sight through the glass terrace door stole his attention. Gerard, hovering some 10 feet off the ground on the back lawn. Parker stepped out onto the terrace and watched as the butler slowly lowered to the ground, but not slowly enough, making his landing abrupt and rough.
It appears it needs a few tweaks,
Henry announced on his approach from a few yards away. Gerard agreed, dusting off his clothes. What are you two up to? Parker asked, trying not to laugh out loud.
Parker, it's a hoverboard prototype for the military.
Henry motioned to Gerard to show Parker. It wasn't like those exploding gifts of a Christmas past. This one was bigger and far more sophisticated. Are you going to try it too? Parker asked his uncle with a chuckle.
Heavens, no. I don't fly.
But you were in the Air Force.
Yes. It wasn't until I enrolled in the academy and started to fly that we realized my propensity to air sickness. Large passenger liners are not too bad, but smaller vessels, he shook his head. I could never get past it, and not too many pilots wanted a partner who might faint or regurgitate in the cockpit at any moment. My real work for the military was performed on the ground. That's what they wanted me for anyway.
Henry had worked on various engineering prototypes and other classified operations during the Cold War, and his love for books propelled the masterminding of the Zhivago project, responsible for dropping banned books, including Dr. Zhivago, into the Soviet Union. Parker's work for Henry soon included retrieving and delivering items either bought or sold by East Coast Mercantile, including delivering a first edition of Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby to a collector in Miami. He didn't always know what he was couriering, though. Sometimes the package was small, sometimes large, sometimes the methods of transfer were of the clandestine nature. There was never any exchange of money. Henry handled those things electronically, so at least Parker didn't have to worry about carrying cash and an extremely valuable painting. He concluded Henry was just pretending it was still the good old days of his military career, a career Parker suspected was far more clandestine than most realized. It had been a couple of months since Jennifer dropped the bombshell of a trust fund. Parker had gone over and over in his mind and his prayers whether to ask his uncle about it. It would be nice to pay off his college loans and not have to worry about finding another job. He could just continue sorting through books. But was there enough money to do that? Surely there was, based on the lifestyles everyone except his family lived. Sure, Jennifer made a handsome salary modeling, and Henry seemed to do well with his business. Vivian, on the other hand, struggled, but he would never be as extravagant. He wouldn't be extravagant at all. He could get out of debt and help people his family couldn't help because others were helping them because they had shunned the family trust. Did it matter where the money came from as long as he did good with it? He needed to find out, so he strode around the perimeter of the house to the study. The door was slightly ajar, highly unusual. Henry and Gerard were diligent about privacy, especially with the study. Parker heard Henry's voice and turned to walk away so as not to eavesdrop, but then he realized to whom Henry was talking.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Henry had resorted to praying the model prayer or the Lord's Prayer, as some called it, because he rarely knew what to say to God anymore. The more he discovered and learned about the world, the wiser he became, the more pessimistic he became. How do you ask God to turn the world around and make everything great, the nation find its way back to God, when you know it doesn't all end that way? Any improvements will only be temporary. He could pray for individuals, of course, and he did. But the world? No, not really. Not this one, anyway. He resolved to pray for the kingdom of God to come and come quickly. Parker waited outside the door until he discerned his uncle's prayer was finished. He felt guilty for listening in on Henry's prayer, but he'd never heard Henry pray at all. Perhaps he just went through the motions by reciting something from the Bible, but there was strong emotion in his voice that indicated more than recitation. Parker knocked on the study door, trying not to push it open further. He entered upon Henry's direction and took a seat. Computer-printed pages of ones and zeros marked up with a red pen covered the desk. A black computer screen on the work desk against the back wall displayed a window of the same. What's with all the pages of numbers? Binary code, right? He had seen Ijue working with such in college. Henry was impressed.
Very good. The universal language of computing.
So you're a computer programmer on top of everything else?
No, just a little hobby. This is my pet project,
Henry said with a wave of his hand over the desk full of papers.
My special algorithm tracking the end of the world as we know it.
The dramatic timbre of his voice sounded as if he was narrating a sci-fi documentary. Parker's eyes widened with a grin, assuming Henry was joking. So you're trying to make a prediction? He asked lightheartedly.
Of course not. I'm merely tracking events and observing the timeline. Numbers are the key. Numbers are the universal language given to us by the deity as confirmation of the truth.
He stared at Parker for a response, of which Parker was clueless, then continued.
Augustine said that. Numbers hold the truth to everything.
Like all the numbers in the Bible and their symbolic meanings?
Not just symbolic. That's where so many people get it wrong. The universe is made up of precise patterns and causes. All of creation, however many universes there may be, is built on numbers.
Henry waved his arms about in an animated emphasis.
Throughout all of creation, humans, nature, there is the golden ratio of proportions. Take Jennifer, for example. She has the ideal facial and overall body proportions favored by the overwhelming majority of today's society. Makes for an effective dopamine generator.
Okay, Parker replied, confused about how numbers could be responsible for Jennifer's attractiveness. What does all that mean?
It means creation was designed by an intelligence far beyond any human being. And history has revealed some rather smart humans over the years.
So you believe the Bible's creation explanation?
Of course I do.
Henry seemed shocked at the question.
A little philosophy inclines man's mind to atheism, but depth in philosophy brings men's minds about to religion.
Again he stared at Parker.
Francis Bacon said that.
So you believe God created everything, not a big bang or something?
Perhaps it was all of the above.
Parker's eyes narrowed in scrutiny.
Perhaps there was a big bang when God spoke. Technically speaking, the more open-minded scientists discover, the more indication there is of intelligent design. The most important element in discovery, Parker, is an open mind. Discovery is always adding layers on top of what we thought we knew previously. Any time one refuses to consider certain possibilities, theories become corrupted. An energy has been discovered that is unlike anything known to man. No one, not even the Big Bang Theory, can truly explain the universe. To borrow a line from Winston Churchill, our universe is like a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. On the whole, man is significantly ignorant.
Parker grinned.
Well, you know yourself from studying history. It's rife with examples. The world is flat, they said. You'll fall off if you go too far. Well, it wasn't until the mid-18th century before the powers of the day declared California wasn't an island. The human race of any generation tends to think of itself as having obtained all knowledge. Those who think they have it figured out only prove their lack of wisdom.
He waved his index finger for emphasis.
In the words of Thomas Sowell, it takes considerable knowledge just to realize the extent of your own ignorance. Every theory runs into problems sooner or later because we see in a glass darkly, so we keep learning. Take these geometric designs.
Henry pulled out a page with groups of numbered triangles.
A discovery just this century allows gems like these to replace pages of mathematical formulas. Pages.
Parker stared blankly at the drawings of triangles and such.
If you say so. How does the algorithm work?
He asked, shifting the subject back to something he thought he might understand.
Ah!
Henry's face lit up with obvious excitement to talk about his project.
It uses chaos theory, mathematics, and nonlinear dynamics based on a unimodal chaotic map to track the effects of seemingly unrelated insignificant events, among other things.
Parker's wide eyes glazed over.
In other words, it gathers information from all over the world about politics, laws, social issues, crime, wars, trends, technology, that's a big one, economic and financial policies and events, and the list goes on.
He said, running out of fingers on which to count them off.
There's nothing like timely, accurate intelligence to help save lives.
So you're saving lives with all this? Parker asked doubtfully.
Newton's linear predictability. He said the world would end in 2060, by the way. The theory's premise is the more information one has of the present, the better he can predict the future. And by predicting the future, lives can be saved. So you're tracking current events, like curating news articles and such, to save lives? Parker was still skeptical. That's part of it. You have to piece together thousands of them and then know what to do with that information. Some of it is insignificant junk, but some is not. That's where the algorithm comes in. Take, for instance, the death of one of the executive board members of the UN's World Food Program. He pointed to a newspaper clipping from a few weeks back lying on his desk. Is that significant? Perhaps. Perhaps not. It's a far more scientific process. Merely collecting current news would be sorely incomplete. Do you know how long something is in the works before it goes public? Even with today's overly aggressive media. No, there's far more behind the scenes that must be considered if one is to truly know the future. The Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, Bohemian Grove, to name just a few, all of the stuff no one is talking about beyond closed doors. Well, then, how do you find out? Henry twisted his pipe between his lips, then circled his lighter around the top, igniting orange embers in the tobacco while he puffed and paced back and forth behind his desk. I have ways. Take that Picasso you delivered in Milan. Well, I didn't actually deliver that, and you said it was all a ruse, that the drawing was a fake. It was, but that doesn't mean the job wasn't important. Vital intel was embedded in the drawing. You weren't just out there wasting time. Parker shook his head. I really don't know what I'm out there doing, because you never seem to tell me the truth. Jennifer may not care what she's doing for you, but I do. I don't care to die on one of your information-gathering missions to save lives. He didn't even try to disguise the sarcasm in his tone. Parker, that's not it at all. I haven't been completely forthright with you because I wanted to protect you. Well, that hasn't worked so well, has it? Henry studied the patterns of the Persian Tabriz rug under his feet. You are still alive, and in possession of all your body parts. He puffed his pipe, releasing another whiff of his favorite tobacco's sweet scent into the room. Henry's resumed silence exasperated Parker even more. Why won't you trust me? I trusted you by leaving everything and coming here to work for you. Henry turned his gaze to Parker. Both men knew Parker had left little, and Henry's job offer brought a welcome source of income. Your silence is just making it look like my dad is right, you know. Henry tilted his head questioningly. Then what you do is illegal. Henry pulled his pipe from his mouth and shook his head sternly. No, absolutely not. It's just the nature of my business. Some of my clients insist on discretion and even anonymity. But did that require all the shenanigans in Milan? I sat in an Italian police precinct for hours with no idea what was going on. I'm sorry about that. Henry began puffing his pipe again. But trust is an essential part of this job, Parker. I need you to trust me. Parker looked away. Just be patient with me a little longer, and I'll tell you more. Don't wait too long, Parker declared. I might not be here. He stormed out of the study, having forgotten to ask Henry about the trust fund. Parker was furious. Furious with Henry, furious with his father, furious with himself. For a long while he stood and gazed toward the forest beyond the walled-in portion of the yard. The occasional wilting bloom from a dogwood floated down to the ground, making the yard appear covered in large clumps of confetti. Mockingbirds chirped a variety of songs all around. As a boy, he had learned of the deceptions of the mockingbird, singing other birds' songs, laying eggs in other birds' nests, and then taking them over
deceiving those around. Parker was tired of being deceived. He made a beeline out the back gate to walk the wooded part of the property. He kicked at a stump, sending it airborne, then kept walking mindlessly through the woods, gradually calming down enough to vent to God. Eventually, the venting turned to questions. Why did Henry not trust him? Better yet, what was Henry up to? A rustling on the ground close by reminded him of the warm spring day, which meant snakes were moving. Sneaky, dangerous snakes. Was that what Henry was? Parker scanned his surroundings with each step, trying to practice Hugo's situational awareness tips. The snake search shifted his thoughts away from his anger. Before he knew it, the backside of Ijue's house was in sight. He walked to the door and knocked. The loud sound effects of a video game paused into silence while Ijue checked the security camera feed surveying his property. Soon Parker was inside on the sofa, sharing an Izzy and his frustrations. But in the course of doing so, he realized he was holding back details, not being forthright with all the facts. It certainly wouldn't gain him any ground with Henry if he blabbed everything to Mr. Conspiracy Theorist.
So you ain't enjoying what you're doing for your uncle?
Ijue asked with some confusion over Parker's anger.
I mean, messing around with dusty old books all the time don't sound like fun to me, but I figured that'd be a dream job for you.
Parker shrugged.
Oh, yeah, Henry does have some fascinating books. And you're getting to travel some.
Parker frowned with a tilt of his head.
Yeah, but getting hauled in by the Italian police.
Ijue grinned.
I don't reckon that's happened anymore, has it?
Parker sighed.
No. I think you're dealing with an eccentric uncle having a little fun with his work. He's old. Let him have fun. You ain't really been in any danger? Not really?
No, I just thought I was.
Well, it sounds to me like you got trust issues.
Et tu, Brute? Why am I the one that has to do all the trusting? Why can't he trust me?
Well, I reckon he will if you give him time.
Parker almost laughed. I can't believe you're coaching me on trust, especially a secretive, eccentric ex-military guy.
Hey,
Ijue said, finishing off his drink and crushing the slender can.
I can be normal sometimes.
He tossed the can over his left shoulder, solidly ringing the garbage can 10 feet behind them.
Hey,
nice shot. Ijue flashed him a toothy grin.
Practice. Look, sometimes in life you have to practice a little blind trust, like with God, and you can't always be in control. You keep saying God ain't listening to you, but maybe it's you that ain't listening. Maybe this is where God wants you.
Parker wasn't in the mood to argue his point anymore, and the sun was making its way downward, so he thanked his friend for listening and started on his way back to the estate. Ijue offered to drive him back home, but Parker chose to walk, more time to himself to ponder. His spirit had settled a bit, but not enough to put him in a forgiving mood. He arrived back at the estate just as daylight faded away. He went straight to his room and didn't even come out for dinner. But he soon realized he would never be effective with hunger strikes, so by midnight, when everyone had turned in, he slipped down to the kitchen. Prices for several famous works of art are mentioned throughout this book, and at the time I wrote it, those prices were accurate. Since then, most have escalated. Henry mentions earlier in the book that the value of anything is man-made, and that's very true in the art world. Perhaps even Henry has helped make some of those prices. They are often driven by auction sales based on the whims of interested parties, but it's not all willy-nilly like that. There are some very man-made manipulations in the market. If you're interested, there is a very good video that I'll link to on YouTube in the show notes. Thanks for listening. Let me know what you think about the podcast in the comments and share it with a friend. Next time, Parker learns some more family secrets.